thank you everybody for coming on, and Representative Diamond for coming tonight for to talk about House Bill 2013, Right to Medical Freedom, which is a constitutional amendment. And I think a lot of people don't maybe understand exactly what that is and how we can use our voices as constituents of the state to try to get this moving, because I'm assuming everybody that's on here really cares about this, medical freedom. But I'd like to start off because you have a journey that led you to write this, and I thought that maybe we could start to talk about journey and what you have going on.
Sure. So my journey into this field of legislation began, I think, in my second session, my second legislative term, which was 5 years ago. We had parents who came to us who had received the annual vaccine notifications that the schools always send out, reminding parents that, they need this vaccine, they get that vaccine and that vaccine. And that's all well and good. But these parents were concerned because their children had either a specific medical exemption or a religious philosophical exemption, all of which are perfectly legal under Pennsylvania law. You can find it in section 1303 of the School Code of 1929, where those religious and medical exemptions are specifically mentioned. Philosophical has kind of come in via case law. It's kind of included under the religious exemption. But those parents, every year when they get those notifications, would get freaked out because, oh my God, my kid can't get vaccines because of whatever situation they're in. And does this mean now that the exemption that I got last year is no longer in effect? And we always assured them, no, the law has not changed. That exemption is in effect. But the schools weren't conspicuously notifying parents that those exemptions exist. Some schools did, but a lot of schools were kind of like on the down low about it. And I thought that it was important for schools to be required to just add 2 sentences to their annual notifications, that when they send that out about vaccinations, that they just do a disclaimer that says, under section 1303 of the Pennsylvania School Code of 1929, religious and medical exemptions are perfectly legal and are still in effect. Something like that. But they weren't doing that. So I introduced a bill which is now known in its 3rd session as House Bill 261, which would require schools every year when they send out these vaccination notices to conspicuously note, and look, it could be a small print on the bottom, it doesn't matter, but it at least has to appear on there somewhere that those exemptions actually are legal and they are still in effect and they do exist. I would love to go further and have the schools instruct parents on how to go about, obtaining those exemptions, but I think that's a little too much to ask on the first try. So that bill is now in its 3rd term. It has never moved out of committee. It is in the Education Committee right now, and there just doesn't seem any appetite to move that bill from the Education Committee. Then in not last summer, but the summer of 2020, when people first started talking about COVID-19 vaccines and the possibility of having this warp speed thing that, got them done really fast and got them to market really fast, because I had witnessed what had happened with masking and every other COVID mitigation effort done by the state government and the federal government, I foresaw that vaccine mandates for COVID-19 would be coming down the pike, and they would be, in fact, mandates. You would have to show your papers and all that sort of thing. And so I introduced a bill to protect Pennsylvanians in the workplace. And why did I pick that? I picked that because we in the General Assembly already regulate the workplace. So it seemed like a good place to start. That was House Bill 2731. It was introduced at the end of the session, never really got any traction because at the end of the session, no bills get traction. I mean, we're just kind of like cleaning up what we did for the other 3/4 of the session. But then I reintroduced that this session, as House Bill 262. And that bill immediately got a hearing in the Labor and Industry Committee. And that's because the chairman of that committee is very in tune with, and at that time there were very early results from the VAERS system. If you know what the VAERS system means, Diana, can you tell them what VAERS stands for?
Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.
There you go. So anytime someone is injured but after a vaccine or dies after receiving a vaccine. Now, the VAERS system is a voluntary system. It's not a mandatory reporting system, but it's been in use for a long time. And what you can do is you can compare results from newer vaccines to older vaccines. And at that time in January of 2021, or maybe it was early February, but I think it was late January, there had already been, this vaccine hadn't been on the market available for more than a month or so. And there were already about 500 deaths reported to the VAERS system. And I think it's pretty common knowledge that the VAERS system is an underreported kind of format because it's not mandatory, it's voluntary. So we were alarmed by that rate. So the chairman of the Labor and Industry Committee, Jim Cox, agreed to at least have a hearing on House Bill 262. It was called the Right to Refuse Bill, where, in the workplace, you would have the right to refuse any mandate by your employer to get vaccinated and that sort of thing. As time went by, we got a little feedback from stakeholders, including the Chamber of Commerce, I believe the Insurance Federation, and there were legitimate concerns. The legitimate concerns from businesses were regarding liability. If someone catches COVID at work, is the employer going to get sued? That's a legitimate concern. And actually, in the General Assembly, we had passed a bill, I believe it was the fall of 2020, that would have given blanket liability immunity to every business in Pennsylvania from COVID, those kind of COVID claims where you can sue your employer because you caught COVID at work. But Tom Wolf vetoed that bill, despite strong support from the General Assembly. So that liability was still in place. So House Bill 262 kind of got tied up in that issue, but we did draft an amendment that was suitable enough at least to get that bill out of committee and satisfied the members of that committee so we get enough votes to get it out. So the Labor and Industry Committee did meet again in early June of 2021, and they did move House Bill 262 out. And it is currently just kind of positioned on the floor for second consideration. I kind of don't think that bill is going to move because I just don't think the appetite was there for that particular bill. However, then when we broke for summer after we did the budget, and frankly, I wanted to make that bill, House Bill 262, a predicate of the budget. I wanted to make sure that any budget that we sent the governor included some kind of leverage. It's like, well, we're not going to send you a budget or any funding at all unless you sign Bill A, Bill B, Bill C. And I thought maybe we could do that with House Bill 262 and guarantee Pennsylvanians the right to refuse in the workplace. Turns out I was outnumbered. Not enough colleagues agreed with me, didn't want to hold up the budget like that. We had discussions about that bill, about several other bills as well that were very important to different people in the General Assembly. So none of it really just held up the budget. We passed the budget and we broke for summer. But knowing that there would be resistance to moving House Bill 262 and seeing what Joe Biden was doing with vaccine mandates from the federal level, I believe that elevated us to a new sphere of operation where we should now push for, and I believe this truly in my heart, we should push for the Constitution guaranteeing a fundamental individual right to medical freedom. And that's where House Bill 2013 came for. So a lot of the people who were co-sponsors of my other two bills signed on to this bill. There's a great deal of concentration on this bill now because it's a bigger deal. It is fundamentally creating the right to medical freedom. And it's not just in Pennsylvania. Since I've introduced this bill, I have gotten some national attention from the Blaze, who said this should be a model bill. Look, if I could run this bill as an amendment to the federal constitution, I would. But I work here in Pennsylvania. I don't work in DC, so I can't run federal constitutional amendments. I would do it if I were in DC, because I think this needs to apply nationally. But I work in Harrisburg, so what I can do is I can work for Pennsylvania. So I believe Pennsylvanians need this right. Again, I've got some national attention on it. I've heard from legislators from, I think, 4 or 5 other states who are interested in taking this idea and running it there, including Idaho and South Carolina, because the language is so clear and so concise. And that's kind of the key here. I took the very simple language of that protects our firearm, our right to bear arms in Pennsylvania, and I combined it with a very simple language that prevents discrimination against people based on their gender or their race or ethnicity. And I combined those words, the language is already in our Constitution, into a new amendment. And I believe that, this is where we need to be. And so just let me tell you why I think that a constitutional amendment is right at this time. For the same reason that constitutional amendments were right last May to curb the governor's emergency powers. That law was the emergency powers. It's actually called the Emergency Management Service Code. That bill was signed into law in 1978. We lived relatively nicely under that law, under the provisions of that law, for 42 years until Tom Wolf came along. And then he abused it. And what we realized in our fight to terminate his disaster emergency, that was my bill too. And that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, nope, you need the governor to give you permission to terminate his disaster emergency. So we had to change the Constitution to do that. We didn't need to do that anytime before Tom Wolf was governor, because other governors used disaster emergencies in very responsible ways to respond to floods, snowstorms, 3 Mile Island, other kind of accidents around Pennsylvania in a very limited fashion. They've used those disaster emergency powers very sparingly. Tom Wolf did not. He abused the power, and we came to a point where we needed a constitutional amendment. It's the same thing on the vaccine front. For many, many years, we have all kind of, even though we don't like it, we've kind of lived with these school mandates. And, if you're a healthcare worker, oh, you got to get the flu shot and that sort of thing. Until they abused it. They abused their power this time. Now, this did not come from the state government. There was no vaccine mandate in general for the citizens of Pennsylvania, but it came down from a federal level. And no matter who you are, I don't care who you are, even the president of the United States cannot violate the provisions of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Constitutional rights protected by a state constitution, they can exceed the level of rights that are protected by the federal Constitution. And I believe Pennsylvania ought to lead the nation. We ought to put this in our Constitution as a fundamental right. And we ought to just set the example for everything. Look, we're not called the Keystone State for nothing. It's because we're a leader. So let's lead on the medical freedom movement. Now, let me just give you the mechanics of a constitutional amendment. A constitutional amendment is a bill just like any other bill, except that instead of being passed once by the House and once by the Senate and then going to the governor, this needs to be passed once by the House, once by the Senate, and then we have to wait for another legislative session to begin. That means there has to be an intervening election of legislators. So we would have to do this once, then do it again with the exact same language in another session. And constitutional amendments do not go to the governor for his approval or veto. They go directly then onto the ballot for the approval of the people. Constitutional amendments are a bargain between the General Assembly and the people themselves. The governor is not involved whatsoever. The Department of State does have to make sure that the ballot question gets on properly. We saw some mistakes made by the Department of State last year on a constitutional amendment, which was utterly embarrassing. But that's the only That's the only involvement that the executive branch has in constitutional amendments. So this is a deal between the people and the General Assembly. So we need everyone to get on their legislators, ask them to support and or vote for, and ask for it to come up to a vote for House Bill 2013. So with that, Diana, I will stop my rambling, and you can ask me any question you like.
I should have been writing down questions as you're talking. I'm like, oh yeah. But I mean, we all definitely see the importance of this. And actually, Health Freedom held a rally for the freedom, because we saw this for freedom for everybody in the state, and it happened to be the day before one of the hearing, the second hearing. And I mean, I remember watching that hearing, the first one, the right to refuse. That was about a year ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And this is just goes to show the importance of, we want all the legislators, all our representatives to feel as strongly about this and be as knowledgeable about this as you are. If they were and they understood, then they might be as passionate about it, and we can get more traction. So everybody who's listening, that's so very important to make sure that you're having those conversations. Personally, Health Freedom has been helping people with lots of exemptions. It's been exhausting. It's been going in waves. And luckily it's died down a lot. We have some information on our website. We probably have over 100 hours into it. We strongly feel that that's what's going to work. We're sad that people have to use a religious exemption to keep employment in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think the fact that, I mean, I like the fact that some of these places are actually offering exemptions, but in my mind, the only exemption you should need is, I don't want that shot. No, thank you. That should be your exemption, period. End of story. End of story. I mean, that's the way it goes. And we're in this position now, and this happened here in I mean, this is happening on the federal level with the vaccine mandates, but here on the state level, it was the same way. It's like Tom Wolf and Rachel Levine, for how long? It was nothing but mask this, mask that, mask this, mask that, mask. Where's your mask? Where's your mask? Why aren't you wearing a mask? And that trickled down into businesses. And then even after Tom Wolf and Rachel Levine let up on the mask, well, Rachel Levine never did. She just went to Washington and continued some foolishness down there. But once they actually let up on the mask, well, it still is being carried on by businesses. I mean, I've been to 2 businesses in the last 2 days who still have signs posted. You must wear a mask to enter this business. But we're over the mask. Even the CDC's over the masks. I mean, my gosh. I mean, we've got schools all over the place which are dropping this mask mandate. But it has a lingering effect when government intervenes on businesses. Those businesses lag behind in dropping that stuff after the government's done. And then we're seeing the same thing with the vaccine mandates. And look, the mask is one thing. It's a pain in the butt. It doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work, especially those cheap cloth masks. If you're wearing like an N95 and it's properly fitted to your face, that's a different story. But we all know the cloth masks were BS. And they finally dropped that. But this is worse, because this vaccine thing, this is injecting something into your body. It is not something you can take off when you go home from work. It is not something you can put aside when you get home from school. It's in you, and it's going to stay in you. And for me, that's a bright line in the sand. And it's a bright line that we draw in the sand with a lot of other areas of law. For instance, you can stand in the street and you can yell bad names at me all day long, and I might be able to get you charged with harassment or causing a disturbance. But as soon as you lay a hand on my physical body, you are now capable of being charged with assault. We draw that bright line right here at my skin. That bright line is drawn in law in so many other areas. And we need to draw that bright line when it comes to vaccines, injections, or any other medical procedure. Everyone should have the choice to say no to what other people want them to do medically.
Sure. And another perfect example is in California. There was a big fight for religious exemptions, and they would never go after medical exemptions, and they went after medical exemptions, and now no one in California can even get a medical exemption. But what their senator out there who's been writing all this, their big vaccine hero, right, is he didn't include the COVID-19 vaccine in or any future vaccine. So it doesn't include the COVID-19 vaccine. And now all of these parents who have been fighting for 5, 6, 7 years to salvage the exemptions for their children, it's awoken this. They were like, this is why, because even though you might believe in today's schedule, what about tomorrow's schedule? You've just okayed that. So now they're calling that, whoops, he messed up. That was a loophole. But that's what people need to remember. You can like vaccines, but you should never like the mandates, because tomorrow you might not want that.
That's right. And look, this has been shown in polls across Pennsylvania. There was a Muhlenberg poll that was done a couple months ago. I think it was in December. And y'all can look this up online. It's just Muhlenberg, Muhlenburg, Muhlenberg.edu. And there is a COVID survey on there, and I believe it's from December. And although 76% of the respondents to that poll were in fact vaccinated, 50% of the respondents to that poll said we oppose mandates. This is not about whether we like the vaccine, whether we think it works. It's about people being able to say, that's not for me. And letting people make their own minds up. And look, we have seen over the last few years, there are movements to try to get rid of the exemptions, the teeny exemptions that we already have. In New Jersey, there was a huge movement in the legislature, and thanks to some health freedom warriors, they stopped their legislature from eliminating exemptions. We have legislators right here in Pennsylvania. If they had their way, if they were running these committees, they would get rid of these exemptions in Pennsylvania. I just cannot live in a place where the government can tell you what you're allowed to say no to when it comes to your body. Here, don't force anything on me. I'm sorry.
Sure. And so that leads to a question that we have in our chat. And one is, are there any concerns about the language of this being used to support abortions and hormone therapy in children?
No, not at all, because this is a right to refuse. If you read it carefully, it does not give you the right to demand anything. The only thing it gives you the right to demand is the right to say no. That's the only thing it does. And quite frankly, on a philosophical point, we are establishing medical freedom as a constitutional right, a fundamental individual right. Anytime you would have language that will allow people to demand certain services from other people, that can never be considered to be a fundamental individual right. Because your fundamental individual rights are the ones you can exercise all on your own without the assistance of anyone else. No one else has to assist you with your freedom of speech. No one else has to give you a place to worship in order to allow you the freedom to worship. No one else has to actually buy you a firearm for you to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. And just like this, no one is forcing anyone to provide any services. This is seriously just a right for you to say no when you want to. That's all.
Sure. And I just want, for anybody who doesn't know, because there's so many new people in this movement that have woken up in the last couple of years.
God bless them all.
I know. We're very excited to have you. Welcome.
Welcome to the party.
There's a number of vaccines in the pipeline. Like they're never good. This isn't just about COVID. Shot.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot coming down the pike. And look, since 1986, there has been a huge increase in the amount of vaccines that they want you to put in your children. And I find that very concerning, especially when the liability there's no liability for these folks who produce these vaccines, you know. And the federal government granted that in 1986. Look, when I was a kid, I took the sugar cube with the polio vaccine on it, and I did it right in my school. I remember getting that big fat shot in my arm where I had the nickel-sized scab on it, and I believe that was measles, mumps, and rubella. You know, we got those basic vaccines, and they worked. I'm not sure how many different vaccines are on these childhood schedules now. Is it somewhere in the number of 70?
It's
47?
69 doses by the time you're 18, 26 in the first year of life.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. It is insane. And quite frankly, have we extended the lifespans of people overall because we're having these vaccines now, all these extra vaccines now? Because that's really the goal of a vaccine, right? Is to keep people healthy so people don't get sick and people don't die. So have we seen any real results from that on a grand scale, massively increasing the amount of vaccines that children get? Look, again, I am not an opponent of vaccines. I believe Jonas Salk did great work in developing the polio vaccine. I believe that those vaccines I got when I was a kid before 1986 actually did some good. But we have now seen this COVID-19 vaccine. Just go back in time and remember all the promises. Oh, you get this vaccine, you won't have to wear a mask anywhere because you won't be getting COVID-19, you won't be spreading COVID-19, and you'll be safe. And then we said, we're going to need a second booster. Oh, okay. Well, now we need a third booster. And over in Israel, they're doing fourth boosters. It's ridiculous. These folks have gone too far, and that's exactly why we need a constitutional amendment. And I'll remind you, look, when the founding fathers put the right to bear arms in our Constitution, it was not because they thought it might be a good idea for the future. It's because they actually lived in a society where you were not guaranteed the right to bear arms, and they saw how bad that would be. We have now crossed the Rubicon on these vaccine mandates, where we have the government has and corporations have carried it too far, and we need to fight back, and we need to say, no, you're not doing this ever again. Because as their narrative on the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, is now falling apart and lies in tatters on the floor, we have to recall, you know, how they kind of tried to bamboozle the whole public into going, oh, this is going to be the answer. Well, now we know it wasn't the answer. And we just need to prevent them from ever doing that to us again. Constitutional amendments guaranteeing individual freedoms, they're always reactive, because prospectively, I can't imagine what government might try to do in 5 years from now. So I can't imagine writing a constitutional amendment and say, this is going to be good in 5 years when they do this. I have no idea what government will try to do. But this is a reactive constitutional amendment saying you've crossed the line and we're never going to let you cross that line again. Period. End of story.
There's a comment in here, but I can make it a question. And this seems important too for people having freedom to refuse unwanted treatment, such as remdesivir and a ventilator, or hospitalized.
Yeah. I mean, those things would fall under this constitutional amendment as well. I mean, you would be able to say in a hospital, I don't want that particular medication. Now, look, there comes into play common sense too. I know that I am not professionally medically trained. And I generally, because I trust my own doctors, I trust that when the doctor, my doctor introduces me to a new treatment for whatever, I trust that he's got my best interests at heart. And I only know that because I've had my doctor for over 30 years now. Unfortunately, he's going to retire and somebody else is going to take over his practice, but I trust him. I trust him, and he knows me. He also happens to be the coroner here in Lebanon County. So if I ever die, he's going to know that I'm dead, you know, because he knows me. But that's how well he knows me, you know. But that's why I trust him, because we have a long-standing relationship. And so you have to use your common sense, where you just can't go, oh, somebody told me blah 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 happened when they got treated with blah blah blah. So for that purpose, I'm going to refuse. Well, if you're in the hospital or something, that might be cause for a hospital to go, well, we're not going to treat you because you're being unreasonable. All we're asking here is for people to be reasonable. And when you see the death rates of people who go on ventilators, there is much to be said about someone wanting not to be put on a ventilator.
Sure. And I think that, there's so many things that you've touched base on that we could have completely separate Zooms just on entirely. But just knowing that we have the right to refuse, and definitely using common sense. Unfortunately, well, we've all seen with this COVID thing, data has been manipulated across the board on every single level. So that's something that I feel like if we can get something like this done, then we can start to backtrack and be like, okay, here's what's going on. I don't even have an update on the VAERS numbers. I don't know if Alan does or anyone does, but last time I checked, it had hit over 20,000 deaths.
Right.
Have been reported.
And isn't that more than all the other vaccines combined over
one year? And something that people don't understand is while VAERS may be voluntary, but it is against the law to file a false VAERS report.
Right.
People are not just filing them because they feel like it. It's tedious. They don't know about it. If you go back and you read read them, these people really believe and have proof that vaccine caused them damage.
Yeah.
So, so that's an argument that someone always tries to say, and I'm like, but listen, here's the deal with VAERS. So, but also, okay, so this leads to, or so many other things. Let's see my notes. So, my question is, I don't know if people know this, but you also will switch from your legislative hat to your campaigning hat.
Okay.
So you'll be leaving, and for anybody who doesn't know, but Representative Diamond is going to be running for lieutenant governor. So I'd like you to talk about what lieutenant governor is, because I don't think that people know, and what that means, and any support that you might need for that. But also, if you won't be in the House of Representatives anymore, so will someone else reintroduce this bill next session?
Yes and yes. So yeah, I'm running for lieutenant governor. There's a number of candidates who are running for the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor. I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to do that. Of course, the lieutenant governor is kind of like the vice president. If something would happen to the governor, then the lieutenant governor would step into the governorship. And I believe that with my experience, not only in the legislature, but with my decades of experience in the private sector, owning a business, working for other people, I believe, when a tragedy like that strikes, God forbid, you want to be able to make that transition as smooth as possible. And I think you need someone with a great deal of experience in order to be able to handle that. And, my history as a business owner, truck driver, working musician, what else? I was a factory worker for 7 years. I've got a really wide array of life experiences that would help that make a transition. I also think the lieutenant governor needs to help our next governor hit the ground running in Harrisburg. And because of my relationships now with members of the House, my colleagues over in the Senate, I believe I can make that happen. I also believe that because I have been standing up for all the important issues to freedom-minded Pennsylvanians, whether it's medical freedom or freedom from Tom Wolf's mandates, getting out from under the lockdown, school closings, mask mandates, vaccine mandates, or election integrity. I've been leading those fights in Harrisburg for the last 2 years, and I believe that will help whoever our next governor is beat the person we need to beat, and who's Josh Shapiro. We don't need Josh Shapiro to lead Pennsylvania again. He will be worse than Wolf. because Wolf is kind of lazy, and Josh Shapiro is a real Wolf. I mean, this guy is aggressive. He's an aggressive progressive, and I think we need to beat him. So I think on all three fronts, I am uniquely qualified to be our next lieutenant governor. That said, there's a lot of people in the race. They're basically all friends of mine, and we're campaigning across the state, and let the best man or woman win, to tell you the truth. But I think I am uniquely qualified. I think I've got a real good shot to win. Right now, we are waiting for, whenever you're a political candidate, you don't just say I'm a candidate and then people get to vote for you. You actually have to petition the state to have your name placed on the ballot, unless you want to run as a write-in candidate, and that doesn't pan out too often. So what we're waiting for now is, because of all the court cases over legislative district maps, kind of the petitioning period to petition the state for ballot access, to have your name appear on a ballot, has kind of been put on hold. We were supposed to have begun that process this past Tuesday, and it was supposed to last for 3 weeks until March 8th, but now it's been put on hold. It might begin on March 1st. It might begin on March 8th. Some say it might not begin until March 20th. So we're just kind of waiting there. We're kind of in a holding pattern. Every candidate for every office in Pennsylvania is in a holding pattern. What I need to do right now is put my petitioning team together, because for instance, in a state house race, like where I have an office now, you need 300 signatures in your legislative district to get on the ballot. In a statewide race like lieutenant governor, you need a lot more signatures. I'll need 1,000 signatures total, including at least 100 from 5 separate counties. So that's quite an effort to put together. Even when you have a 3-week period of time, it's like herding cats. You got to have a support network across the state. I'm not sure we're going to get the full 3 weeks this year to do it. So I'm asking the folks at Health Freedom Pennsylvania. I've already talked to Diana about this. Thank you so much, Diana, for helping out. But if you folks would like to help me get on the ballot for lieutenant governor, so that my name can appear at the primary election, so that you could vote for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Diana's going to be heading up one of the efforts for me. So if you can get in touch with her, maybe we can get you connected as well in that. So you did ask, the second question is there going to be someone there if I win the lieutenant governorship? Will there be someone in the legislature to reintroduce this bill next year? Because even if it passes this year, we'll have to have this introduced again next year as a constitutional amendment. I guarantee you, I will have someone lined up to reintroduce this exact same language next year, whether I'm lieutenant governor or not.
Okay. And do we have lots of support in the Senate as well?
I'm not sure, because this is a House bill. So we've been trying to focus on getting it moved through the House now. So we've only been focused on, co-sponsors on the House side, supporters, people who will vote yes on the House side. Once it gets out of the House, then I'll go over and I'll start duking it out with senators over this bill. And we won't have to duke it out, because I know we've got a lot of freedom-loving senators over there as well. I've got a couple in mind who I think would be able to go to champion this bill once it gets over there. But the first step is, in fact, getting it to the floor of the House for a vote and sending it to the Senate. So I always like to have my ducks in a row and only focus on the ducks I need to focus on and save the other ones for later. It'd be great to line up 26 senators right now to say, hey, send us this bill and we'll move it right away. But I want to focus the effort on my colleagues in the House, so that we can make a statement as the first legislative body in the entire United States to move to create medical freedom as a fundamental individual right. I think that'll be blockbuster national news when we do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And this is, when you first introduced it, I was very excited. And then I talked to you in December, and what we as Health Freedom team decided that we were going to do to try to get some excitement around this was we wanted to run a petition.
Yep.
So that we could have, we can let people know, could visually show our legislators, hey, do you realize that we're running this petition for this? Because it's so important. And we have all these people in your district because we're trying to keep track of district numbers, which now that's going to change. So we have some extra work to do, but that's how it goes.
Well, we're all in the same boat together on that.
Right. But also we can use this for people who don't understand how important this is. As we get excitement around this petition, we have I think we're up to like 523 digital signatures. I have some paper signatures as well. We just have input. If anybody out there has a business or is willing to take paper signatures, that'd be great. Or you can lead them back to that. But that's really important for people to know, and to let your legislators know, your house, your district, your PA representatives.
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And let me tell you how important that is from a legislative perspective. It's impressive to me when one constituent goes out of their way to come and personally meet with me on any particular topic, because most people think that sending a form, email, or something like that is the way to strike my nerve. I am very impressed when anyone takes time out of their day to come and talk to me as a legislator about any particular, no, it doesn't matter what issue it is, whether I agree with their issue or not. To me, it's a significant personal commitment to make that commitment to come and see your legislator. When somebody comes and not only makes the personal effort to come and see me, but also hands me a list of other people's names and maybe their phone numbers, and they go, here's the 50 people in your district who agree with me on this issue, and here's the way to contact them if you'd like to reach out. That's very significant for any legislator. When you have a bunch of people in one legislator's district who care about an issue, that's when the action really starts happening. It doesn't happen often. Sometimes it happens with just one person coming to me and talk to you. But when I know there's a significant portion of my constituency who all agree on one issue, it makes me start paying attention a little bit more than just that one person. I'm not diminishing the role of one person who comes to talk to me. But when there are numbers behind that, boy, the motivation for any legislator, it increases exponentially once you have a number of people in one particular legislative district. So, I would just caution you that when you do this, if you're calling a legislator's office, it's not appropriate to say to that legislator or to that legislator's staff, if you don't support this, we're going to vote you out. Because as legislators, we have two roles. We are candidates and we are legislators, but here's the thing, we're not allowed to intermingle the two. So if you call a legislator and say, if you don't support this, I'm going to vote you out, they're probably just not going to respond, because we're not allowed to respond to political stuff using our legislative resources. And we have two former speakers of the House who went to jail for that, to prove that we can't do it. So if you want to talk to them about you're putting electoral pressure on them, you want to do that through their campaign. If you want to talk to them about encouraging them to sign on to Bill A, which should come first before any electoral pressure, then that's the thing to do in our legislative office. So just make sure you are not mixing the two purposes together. There's a proper place for one, and there's a proper place for the other. And we as legislators, we have to draw a real bright line. Just like we're drawing the line at our skin for medical freedom, we have to draw the line as legislators between the difference between legislating and official legislative business and running for re-election or election to office. So we just keep in mind, as you're doing this, we have to keep a bright line of separation between the two. And it's always great if y'all can do that too.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up, because I guarantee there's a lot of people that understand that or knew that.
Yeah.
And that's so important for people to know. And a suggestion that I would have would be to, first of all, you want to make sure that you know who your state senator and state representative is. You can go to, well, it's on our homepage, right under the petition, but you could just use an internet search and put in find my PA legislator, and it'll pop right up. And you might want to, even if you know, you might want to check, because in the next couple of weeks, because yours might be changing. I do believe mine's changing. So we finally, after almost 6 years, have convinced everyone to figure out who their state legislator is. And now we get to tell them, no, wait, it might have changed.
Yeah. Well, we do that every 10 years. That's a requirement of the federal constitution, is that we recount all the people in the United States. And then we decide to redraw maps so that everybody's represented in a fair manner. I mean, the thing that I want you to keep in mind when you're approaching legislators is you are going to attract a whole lot more flies with honey than you will with vinegar. So
Absolutely.
you'll want to go and look, this could be the beginning of something great for you, because I want you to know that as a legislator, there's very few things I do for strangers that it's hard for me to do something for a stranger that I don't have even though they're my constituent, that I don't have like an ongoing conversational relationship with. It's so much easier to do something with somebody I know and that I trust than it is for me to do something for someone who walks off the street, proclaims to be my constituent. So this is a great opportunity for you to develop a relationship with your legislator. I know that as a legislator, I do appreciate the relationships that I've developed with people who were new to me when I first got elected to office in 2015. And now, 7 years later, these are old friends for me. And when they bring me ideas, I know they're not trying to sell me, for the sake of this particular conversation, they're not trying to sell me some snake oil. Okay. They are coming to me because we have an existing relationship where we trust each other. I tell them the truth. They tell me the truth. And even though we disagree, if we disagree, we walk away respectful of each other and that sort of thing. This is the great time to start a relationship with your legislator rather than seeing them as someone who is working against you all the time. And look, I know I was on the outside once and I had a very dim view of legislators. Well, that changed a lot when I got elected because I got to know legislators, and we're all decent people. And we're all trying to do the right things for our constituencies. So when you go in and you have a conversation rather than a confrontation with a legislator, you're going to be able to develop that into a relationship. And look, it's not just true in politics, but when I was in business or when I worked for other people, I also realized that if you don't have a relationship with someone, you're not going to be able to do a lot of business with them. I always prefer doing business with people I trusted than doing it with strangers. So this is a great opportunity for you to become acquaintances and friends of your legislators rather than people that they are going to, if they see you coming, they'll hide in the back office and pretend they're not there. I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
We actually have a really good blog post on our Health Freedom blog about developing relationships with legislators and how important it is. And just another really good example of this is I had a really bad meeting with a legislator, a Republican legislator, and it was the first meeting I ever had, and it was bad. I mean, it didn't go over well. This wasn't Russ, but I just want, I kept my cool. I wrote him a thank you card. I kept my relationship with him. Now it's been almost 4 years. And last night he sent me a message on Facebook to ask me a question. He called me today because he trusted me, and it wasn't Russ, but you never know who's going to be on your side to ask a question.
Right.
So how do I, rip this person apart who probably deserves it at the time? That would never have happened today.
Right.
So it is important. And I've learned a lot, and this is the most important thing. Legislators are people too. I mean, you were the most normal person. You weren't right. You weren't born in politics. You didn't roll out of college and get this job. You're a regular person like everybody else. So don't be intimidated by your state representative.
Yeah. I always people always come into my office and they'll sit down and go, well, Representative, we're here. I said, stop right there. My name is Russ. I used to drive truck for a living. I shovel my own snow and I take my own garbage out. I'm a regular person just like you. You can call me Russ. I don't go for that title stuff. And look, not everybody's like that. Some people prefer to be called by,
Mhm.
the representative title, and that's fine. But here's the thing: I try to make people feel comfortable because I know that going to see your legislator for any constituent is generally it's a pretty big deal because generally you're taking time off work unless you're seeing them in the evening. So I'm always very respectful of people who come to me, even if we walk away disagreeing on everything they talked about. I am always grateful that they've taken the time to come see me. And I always see it as the opportunity to begin a relationship where maybe someday we will find some common ground.
Sure, absolutely. Um, we did post in the comments for anybody who hasn't seen. If anybody, Russ made a really fun music video. He's very talented. He's a great singer. And actually, this other legislator that representative I talked to today was like, I mentioned we were having this Zoom tonight, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, have you ever seen his artwork?" He was like, "He's so talented." And I'm like, I have not. So you're definitely a jack of many trades, I hear. But yeah, so he made a music video. We posted in our link. I'll definitely put it out on our email list. And if anybody is interested in helping Representative Diamond get signatures, you can reach out to me. We can help. We can help.
Yeah, or you can go to russdiamond.vote, not .com, not .net, not .org, russdiamond.vote. That's the Friends of Russ Diamond campaign website. You can sign up for email alerts there. We're pretty much letting everybody know via email what's going on with this petitioning business. But Diana here, she has some experience doing it. She'll be doing it for us in Beaver County, if not for others. But no, it's a daunting task, and we need all the help we can get. And look, if you want someone in the executive branch of government who's going to be a champion for health freedom, and we'll make sure that this bill gets run again next year as it needs to be. Please consider supporting me. I would be very gracious for your support. But that's not the topic of tonight's call. Tonight's call is about House Bill 2013 and its importance. So, but I appreciate you bringing it up.
Sure, absolutely. And if we can end the call on anything, we want to definitely end with everybody with a call to action. So I'm going to leave you to do the call to action. And as this bill is continuing to move, we'll keep everybody updated on calls to action as well.
Yeah.
Each step of the way.
Yeah. So the call to action right now would be find your legislator, reach out to them, find out what their position is on House Bill 2013, establishing medical freedom as an individual right in the Pennsylvania Constitution. I would appreciate getting feedback from you about what their response is, because we've had a lot of responses. I mean, there have been some people who have asked some very legitimate questions. People who have asked legitimate questions about the what would happen to the status of powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney under this. Well, the answer is nothing. People who have asked legitimate questions about, well, what about when somebody is involuntary committed in Pennsylvania? Can they still refuse? No, because that's an adjudicated process. I mean, you can't be involuntary committed without some sort of adjudication from a court, and that would be sort of an exception under this thing. So, I mean, there are a lot of valid questions that come up, and a lot of them have come from legislators. But it's been through the feedback loop that I get that either I see them in the hall and they say, hey, somebody was here talking about your bill. Here's the question I have about it. Or I get it from the other end, from the person who went to see that legislator. Is like, I went to see Legislator Smith, and Legislator Smith said, here's his issue with it, and I'll provide you with the answer so that you can call Legislator Smith back and maintain your relationship, build your relationship with Legislator Smith. And I might follow up with Legislator Smith after that, after you've told me you've called him, and reassure Legislator Smith that, yeah, that's the real answer, But we've had a couple real, actually important questions come up, powers of attorney, involuntary commitments, and how this would impact that. And there are answers already. There are answers for those things. So We need you to call your first, identify your legislator. Second, if you can, go see them in person. Every legislator in Pennsylvania has an office outside of Harrisburg, somewhere near your home. Okay. So if you can make an appointment with them to go talk about how important health freedom is to you, get their feel for House Bill 2013. Diana has a list of the legislators who've already co-sponsored this and are totally in favor of it. You've already been tracking other people who are in favor of it. And look, there are other groups like Health Freedom that have been doing the same too. And there's going to come a time where everybody's going to like join forces and go, okay, here's our plan of action now to get this thing finally over the finish line. I'm very much looking forward to that kind of cooperation amongst the various different groups who are in favor of this bill. So, but your job now is to reach out to your legislators personally, find out where they stand on it. If you want to reach out to your senator too, even though for me, I'm not doing that yet. I'm not reaching out to the Senate yet, but for you guys as grassroots organizers to go out and get the feel for where the Senate stands on this right now, it's going to be very informative when I kind of nudge my leadership in the House and go, look, we already have 26 senators who say they'll vote for this, and that's a real motivator in the House, knowing that a bill will get through the other chamber. That helps. So any information we can get on feedback from you, from your legislators, is very, very helpful to me as the prime sponsor of this bill, as I talk to our leadership and convince them to try to get this bill across the finish line so that we can run it again next session and then get it on the ballot so that you, the people, can go and approve it.
Sure. That's great. That's perfect. Do you have a link for the coverage on the bill from the Blaze?
I can send it to you, Diana.
Okay.
I can send it to you as soon as we get off the Zoom call here. I will send it to you if you want to transmit it. Yeah.
Okay. And then I had another question and I totally forgot what it was. Oh, this is what it is. So just to clarify too, there's that really fine line between campaigning and legislative work. Now, if you see your legislator out while he's campaigning, could you also ask about this then?
Yes, you could do that. When they're out campaigning, they can do both things.
Okay.
It's just when they're in the legislative office, we can't touch anything that has to do with any political campaign, including our own. When we're out campaigning, we can do dual purpose. We can have the overall, both conversations. But when we're in our legislative offices, we can only have one conversation.
Yeah. So I suggest that everybody out there find your representative's campaign page as well and follow what's going on. First of all, you should be following them on social media and on their mailing list anyway. And they do have opportunities outside of their office. They have events, they have town halls. You can be following what they're doing on their Facebook page. You can be following what they're doing legislatively, but then also like you mentioned, you all have that campaign page as well. You want to be following that because it's campaign season and they're busy. I mean, I can't even imagine the amount of hours that you will be putting in.
All of them. All of them. I've already apologized to my beautiful wife dozens of times for the time I've been putting into this campaign, because it's like sometimes I feel so bad because she's kind of like, I mean, a lot of my time is spent like working on my laptop in the living room, but she's on the other side of the living room. We're in the same room, and I'm so busy. Sure. I can't, so we do very much appreciate sitting down to dinner together and being able to talk about things that are really important in life other than politics. But yeah, this really does take a lot of my time up. And for anybody who is now running for either election or re-election to the House or the Senate, it is the vast majority of their time and effort is being put into these things right now. But if they're out and about, they're out and about because they want to talk to people. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you want to be one of the people that they want to talk to because you're going to develop that kind of trusting relationship with them that when they see you walking down the street, they go, I know that person, I'm familiar with them, and I'm comfortable talking to them.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Well, I won't keep you anymore. You gave us a little bit over an hour of your busy schedule.
All right.
And there's not really any other questions, and we just appreciate you so much. I really do. And we're gonna really, really try to get some excitement behind this,
Okay.
and go from there. So what?
Okay. So hey, thanks for showing my video. You share my video. Now look, the name of the song is "We Are Free," and I believe that, you know, here in the health freedom movement, we should be free. But the lyrics of the song are, "We are free to make things right." That's the real freedom, is that when we have the freedom to change something that is not going the right way and turn it into the right thing, which I believe House Bill 2013 will do, and what the health freedom movement is actually working for, we are free to make things right. So don't forget to check out that video, share it on your Facebook page, go over to russdiamond.vote, sign up for my email updates, and you can follow me in a lot of different places on Facebook, but just go to Friends of Russ Diamond on Facebook or russdiamond.vote. Okay. And I thank you all so much for your efforts, for your work, and for your support for health freedom.
Thank you so much. You have a great night.
All right. God bless.